Okay. Go ahead, Mayor.
All right, we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. And this is really a follow-up and continuation to the council meeting that we had yesterday. If you recall, at that meeting, we talked about several different measures that we wanted to consider adding to the emergency ordinance number 2020-2. One of those related to supporting our grocery stores, or specifically Harris Teeter, with respect to their operations, and the others all had to do with addressing issues that we were dealing with regard to short-term and ultimately long-term rentals. What I would ask is, and I don't think this will take very long, during the evening, Stephanie Tillerson, our town administrator, and Joe Wilson, our attorney, have worked on language to try to capture yesterday's discussion. What I'd like to do is just take it paragraph at a time, the new paragraphs, some combination of Joe and Stephanie basically going through quickly summarizing the language, and let's have a discussion, make sure that everybody's comfortable that the language captures what it was we were trying to accomplish, and then we'll move to the next paragraph, and hopefully at that point we can take a vote and be done with this. The first paragraph that I think is new or is altered, Stephanie is telling me, is number 6, right? Which did exist, but it has some additional or new language added into it. Joe, you want to take us through that?
Yeah, what I did with paragraph 6, which deals with punishments for short-term rental violations, was I made it clear that those punishments are limited to civil infractions under the Kiowa town ordinance. And of course, civil infractions can include civil fines or revocation or suspension of a business license, but not jail time or anything like that. And similarly, though, we're also clarifying that any civil or criminal penalties under state law or federal law, including violations referenced in the governor's executive orders, are available to us.
Somebody's dog.
Sorry.
What's that?
Sorry, that's my dog.
Oh,
I
mine
hear your dog better.
mine just jumped off the couch when she heard that. So, all right. Any questions from anybody on that language?
Honestly, I couldn't hear it all. I read it though. I don't have a problem with the language.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
I could hear Joe. It's fine for me.
Fine for me.
All right.
Good.
All right. Paragraph 7 was already there. There are no changes to paragraph 7, are there?
No,
Paragraph 8.
So, paragraph, do you want me to do this, Stephanie?
I can do it. That way Mary Ann can hear me.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. Let me move mine so I can see. Paragraph 8, what that shows is that what we've done is extend the definition of short-term rental to 90 days or less for the emergency order. And right now we have that effective August 4th, which was last Saturday. So that's a discussion that council will need to have in terms of if they want that date to remain in effect, or if they like to move that date to today or Friday or Saturday. But that language is for extending our short-term rental definition for the emergency order purposes to 90 days. What this does is that in addition to that, we put in place that guests that are currently checked in can remain in the same property under the same
Right.
terms or the same company. What this does also is prevent kind of house jumping a little bit. So what we're seeing is that a renter that's been here for maybe 2 weeks decided that they want to extend their rental for another 2 or 3 weeks. What's happening is that the current house that they're in is either the owner is coming in or is already reserved, for whatever reason is blocked, so they can't stay. So then they are looking for another house to go to. And so what we're doing is what we've treated that as a new rental. So under this definition, I think that cleans it up to say, if you're going to stay and extend your rental, that's fine as long as you stay in the same property under the same term of existing rental. And then also this does not prohibit an owner from coming in, obviously to stay in their own property, or if they have a guest that is coming in just as a guest, they're not charging them a setter, they're just coming in as a guest. And that is really all the significant changes to number 8. Joe, do you want to add anything?
No, I think that covers it.
Okay.
So Stephanie, let me clarify, or just say it in different word, taking the second part first. So that people who are legitimately, according to our rules, currently in a short-term rental, if they, within the unit, the house, the villa, whatever that they're in, are seeking to extend that under their existing contract, they had a 2-week contract, now they want to stay three weeks. We have been allowing that, and this will continue to allow that. But where the person is in a situation that the house or property they're in is going to be no longer available, we're not allowing them to move to a new property. At that point, that would have been considered, or we're taking the view that is a new booking, and we're not allowing by prior action new bookings. So we're not allowing them to move and extend to a different property.
Right.
That's what that does.
Yes.
Which does, and I realize when we got into this, we said, oh, is that a big issue? What's happening, certainly in some of the emails I'm getting from people, essentially are the concerns. I got 2 last night from people who, the thrust was, well, I thought you shut down and weren't allowing any more short-term rentals. And they're going, but yesterday I had 2 cars arrive in the driveway next door. I had, bikes, kids getting out, bikes all over the place. I thought rentals were stopped and I wasn't going to have any next door to me. So I think this moving from house to house is certainly, I don't know if it's the biggest problem in the world, but it certainly is unsettling to some people as to why, and leaving a lot of questions about whether we really have rentals shut down when new houses seem to have new renters going into it. So first part is that position one which the council members are comfortable with?
I'll go ahead and comment. I'm comfortable, and the reason I am is if we stay with the current situation, the rental base is actually expanding, because if I'm here and I can move to another house, but somebody's already moving into the house I'm in, we basically expanded the base, which is what we're not trying to do. By saying if you stay in the same place, we haven't expanded the base. So I think this is an important change, and I'm in support of it.
I think also that it's not an unusual situation for people to want to extend, given the states that they are from. I think the state of the virus in their home state will influence whether people want to stay here in some cases.
Now, the first part of this was really, excuse me, really trying to deal with the extension of long-term rentals. And our initial language had been fully around rentals that we defined as short-term, 28 days or less. It's a reaction to all of a sudden the number that we began to see quickly of technically rentals that were not short-term, but there were 32, 35, 40 days. And essentially, the discussion yesterday was that that allowing those to continue was really inconsistent with the original intent of trying to put a stop on new rentals on the island. I think I think the thrust of this is consistent with what I heard from everybody yesterday. I think the question here is what the effective date is. The way this is written, the April 4th date is in there. Essentially what it would say is, at this point, nobody who has signed one of these agreements but is not yet here would be allowed to check in. And I think the question is, and we had the same issue a week ago, do you make it effective since this is something that we've just recently decided to do you make it effective this minute, which potentially puts you in the position of turning away people as they reach the island. And I don't know whether that's 0 or 10 people, or do you make this effective 24 hours from now or 48 hours from now, or something which at least minimizes the impact on a family who is legitimately and in good faith already in transit to the island. I think that's the question that needs to be addressed on this provision as it relates to the long term, to this group that we've added, which are now the people beyond 28 days but less than 90.
I guess I have a little, I'm a little confused. Who would be in this group traveling here if we've had no new check-ins since April 4th?
This would be somebody who, remember, we had never stopped bookings for 20 because it had not been thought about. We had not stopped any bookings for long-term rentals. So this could be somebody that booked with anybody, an individual, or with one of the firms. This could have been somebody who booked a 32-day rental for check-in this afternoon, which we had never stopped those bookings. So that's what this is doing. So you could have some people who are booked and will be arriving. And at what point do you stop? Because the way this is written, it is not simply stopping new bookings, it's stopping new bookings and new check-ins. So I guess the question is, from the discussion yesterday, was the intent of the council to both stop the bookings of long-term rentals under 90 days, to stop the bookings and also prohibit check-ins? And if it's the latter, prohibit the check-ins effective what date?
Look, we'll also, I mean, part of the reason we are concerned about this 28-day limit is that there is some evidence that that this is being used to circumvent the ordinance. And so if there is a family that pitches up indeed this afternoon, there is a good chance, there is a chance that they are part of a sham 30-day rental. Could also be a real one. I'm just wondering a little bit about this because we've had so few long-term rentals in the past and suddenly they're there. So are they all really legit? I would personally, my view would be, I would say that it is effective the 4th. There's no grace period. However, we could add something, as we did in the previous paragraph, that owners or renters are allowed to appeal in exceptional circumstances with strong documentation. For example, that would be the family that's coming day after tomorrow. They have a legit, I don't know, 35, 45-day contract with the appropriate price for all that. And they can show us that that is a real longer-term rental. So I would leave that as an appeal process, but otherwise shut it down.
I tend to agree with that. And the reason is, if you go back to the rationale for why we stop short-term rentals, a lot of it's associated with trying to limit the exposure of our current, the people on the island to the virus. So even though these are called 30 days or long-term, it's still no different if we go back to the foundation of our decisions.
I would agree. I think the idea that we stop it and we provide a special provision under unusual circumstances with documentation, and we grant an exception.
Yeah, the paragraph already has an exception application available to it. The second thing is, can we reach out to the 4 major rental agencies and ask if they have any that we need to be aware of?
Do we have a sense, Stephanie, of how many are currently out there to arrive?
Yeah, we checked right now and we're not sure, we don't see, so as of, well, after the 25th of March, we had 8, but we don't think that we have any that are due to arrive today or tomorrow, that we know of. Dan did not see any that was due to arrive today or tomorrow.
So that would imply this language would work okay. This language then would give you the discretion to deal with a family if there were.
Right, in case we didn't know about anyone and they showed up at the gate would then notify us and we would get all the necessary information. Now what could happen is that, of course, they show up tonight or tomorrow and we weren't aware of it. And based on, obviously, the passing of this ordinance as it is of April 4th, we would have to turn them away, not unless they go in and obviously modify their reservation in 91 days. But yeah, we have to turn them away.
Craig, going back to your comment, why don't we go ahead anyway and reach out to the 4 big rental companies and find out from them proactively, do you have anybody that's going to fall into this gap? They can contact them and figure out how to get an exception if it's necessary, just to prevent somebody coming in at 7 o'clock tonight and nobody's around.
Well, that would be their responsibility.
From the major ones that we have, the 4 we already know and keep good record with them, is the Airbnb ones we don't know.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so am I hearing that ultimately everybody's okay with this language?
One other question, who speaks for the town? Is it Stephanie and the mayor? When it says appeals to the town, does that, I mean, who's the authorized agent for the town? The administrator and the mayor?
I had sent you an email, Chris, because I wasn't sure what you were referring to. So in that, and Joe, please chime in. What we're doing right now is the term appeal is not the same process as I'm looking at it as not the same process as the formal appeal. It's in our code. What's happening right now is if anyone is denied by Jan, then what happens, that person or property management company will ask to speak to the town administrator, and I typically look into it, and then I would either say yes, based on Jan's position, she's right and we cannot approve it, or let me talk to Jan if there's a way, and if there's something that we overlooked, then we go ahead and approve it. That's what we're doing in terms of, I guess, an appeal, but it's not a true, because we're not taking away any licenses right now. There's nothing to appeal because we haven't revoked anything.
Joe, from a legal standpoint, do you think we need to be more explicit? Do we need to define that the town to be the town administrator, for example?
No, I mean, if y'all want to start going into that, that would require a good bit more work. I would much prefer to adhere to the current procedures that are in place. I think that what Stephanie has described should
Is fine.
And the reference to an appeal is merely to any generic appeal. And it's just to clarify, that's back in paragraph 6. It's just to clarify that an appeal, whatever that appeal might look like,
Okay.
doesn't stay the suspension of a license.
Okay.
Good.
All right, go to number 9. Number 9 takes us to a different issue, which was is really focused on assisting Harris Teeter. So as we discussed yesterday, they now are under a requirement that they be able to minimize the number of people in the store at one time. They surmise that will require, excuse me, at some times that they will have to actually restrict people hold people outside. They have a process set up for that. But what they would like and have asked for is the ability to limit the number of people from a single family to one person, except for in a couple situations. I mean, obviously where you have someone who let's say was handicapped or visibly needed assistance, or if you had, you know, somebody with small children and there was obviously nobody there to leave the children with, that they would like to have the requirement, the ability to in fact enforce a one-person rule, which is something that we have been communicating and asking people to do for some time. And the intent here is to turn that from just a please, would you, to having some enforcement. So this would allow and essentially requires that store or any retail store, the way it's written, to limit the number of people from a single grouping or family to one person. Any, well, first of all, Joe, did I explain that correctly? Did I explain correctly what this language does? And then any comments or changes or thoughts from the council members?
I'm a little, I think you raise a good point about there could be exceptions. So perhaps we should add a phrase similar to what's in paragraph 8.
Well, that is the paragraph 8.
Okay, well, I've got.
I thought it was 9.
No, we're on, I'm sorry.
Run now.
I'm sorry, did we get to, yeah, we've got a 9, and in 9, we have it in 9, except for shoppers with small children and no other adult is present. So we have that exception language in 9.
That's good. That looks good.
Yeah, we have it there.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Stephanie already dealt with that issue, so that's good.
Yeah. Any comments on number 9?
No issues.
No issues.
Just a question. Will the enforcement of that still be up to Harris Teeter, or are we suggesting adding with enforcement help?
The discussion that I have had with Harris Teeter is that while the primary enforcement or operation of this falls on their shoulders, that if from time to time that they have problems or need assistance, that we have the ability to either provide one of our deputies or code compliance officers to assist them. But I think what the sense is that with the proper signage, and I think once this has been in operation for a while, and when they're in a position to say this is the requirement, not just a request, that they should be pretty good.
Thank you.
Okay, before we go to 10, did we agree on a date for 8?
That is
April
effective-
4th?
That would be effective immediately.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Does that need to be added in there, or is that implicit?
I left the old language starting April 4th, so that would indicate that it's immediate.
Okay.
I mean, we can
Whatever.
change starting immediately, but I think April 4th is the same.
Yeah, I think that's good, April 4th.
Okay. So we're agreeing with that. We still have to vote on this all as a package, but we're agreeing with that with the April 4th date, which is
Thank you, Mayor.
of course already gone by, right?
Right.
All right. Number 10, the services offered by commercial businesses providing services on the beach, such as but not limited to beach chair and umbrella rentals and setups, are hereby suspended for 30 days effective at 5 o'clock tomorrow. This language changed a little bit from the way it still essentially is affecting the the Island Beach Services setup of umbrellas on the beach. But what we're trying to do here, as Stephanie and I talked about this, what we're trying to do is not to eliminate or otherwise unduly impact Island Beach Services business. What we're trying to do here is deal with an issue on the beach where the concern was that the commercial activity on the beach, the umbrellas and whatever, were not consistent with the governor's order that the activity on the beach and on the island, that this is essentially a stay-at-home. The desire is to promote and motivate people to stay home. That exercise is okay, but what we weren't trying to do is to essentially turn the beach back into a major place to be. But we didn't want to do it in a way that we were shutting that business down. So what it doesn't do is suspend Island Beach Services business. It doesn't say they can't do business. It just says what they can't do is the business on the beach. So they can still, like anyone else, if they have property owners on the island who want to purchase a rental from them and have it delivered to their house or driveway, similar to a couple other entities on the island, they can still do that. What they can't do is they cannot be out on the beach, putting the equipment out on the beach, doing the rentals on the beach, or doing the setups. If we had done this the way we talked about it yesterday, we would essentially be putting them at a disadvantage to, let's say, Vacay and some others who are in the business of taking setups to people's driveways. So, and we would suggest that this be effective at 5 o'clock tomorrow, so that they have sufficient time to deal with existing rentals and orders that they've already got. Stephanie, Joe, have I explained that accurately?
Yes.
And any comments by any of the council members?
No issues.
No,
Nope.
Number 11. I'm looking at Joe or Stephanie, one of you.
Yeah, I'll just real quickly, this is just almost a repeat of the prior violation paragraph, but it just expands it to cover everything we're making orders on, and these emergency orders and violations of same. And again, it's clarifying that we're limiting the civil fines under the Kiowa ordinances or removal of a license. And that in addition, they could be facing any civil or criminal penalties under state law.
Any comments, questions, changes?
Nope.
No problems on my side.
I have a question. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
My question is, the 57 violators from yesterday, does this apply to them?
If you're talking about short-term rentals, that's really dealt with more in the prior paragraph 6.
In the
6
prior
deals
what?
spec-
Is dealt with in the prior paragraph 6 under short-term rentals.
Because
So
for
in regards to the citations that we issued yesterday, Mary Ann, that would be
Yes.
more in paragraph 6 of this ordinance.
So there is a fine in paragraph 6?
Yes,
Okay,
There
thank
is.
you.
Yeah,
up to $500
Yep.
civil fine.
yeah.
Very good, thank you.
For short-term rentals, Mary Ann, we're essentially using the language, the penalties that exist within our short-term rental
Right.
ordinance. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. And then number 12.
Number 12, number 12 is what was discussed yesterday in regards to the fines that we are collecting due to the violations in our short-term rental. Council discussed taking the net fine amount, anything that we need to send to the state, victim assistance that still goes to the state, but any net fine amount that we collect that town council would like to earmark and donate that to a nonprofit or charitable organization that will be selected at a later date by town council.
Good.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm
All
good.
right. So with no other changes, I think then we're at a point of, I would be asking for a motion to approve, and make sure I get this correct. So it would be a motion to approve ordinance 2020-2 as amended.
So moved.
Is that, let me guess, Stephanie or Joe, is that the correct motion?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So I heard a second.
Second.
All right, with that, any further discussion?
None.
None.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, it passes. Is there any other comments or any other business from any of the council members?
I wanted to say one thing. I just wanted to give a shout out to Jan and her team for what they're doing, because they are doing serious yeoman's work, and I think it's really, really helping. So I thought that should be said.
They have worked really hard.
I'd
And
raise one other thing, Craig, which you talked about before. I think the vast majority of our owners have done an excellent job in trying to follow the spirit as well as the letter of the law here. And it's unfortunate that we have people who are doing what they're doing, which is trying to circumvent it and put people in harm's way. So thank you to all the people who are renting and following the guidelines that we've set forth and the rules that are out there.
And to that point, Dan, I mean, I would only add on also, you know, it is a little bit like whack-a-mole here. Every time we think we've dealt with one issue. But in case, you know, anyone were of the view that somehow this is just the town council who has sort of gotten up some steam and irritation about this, the emails, the response certainly that I'm getting from individual property owners suggests that it's not just us. I mean, I am getting emails, and I don't want to exaggerate. I don't want to pretend that they are in the dozens, but nonetheless, from homeowners who the thrust of the email is, look, I'm trying to take this seriously. I am trying myself to keep distance from others and try to avoid being exposed to this virus. And I get one of two questions. Either they are then concerned because they think that we have taken an action that has essentially closed off the short-term rentals or additional people coming on the island, and their experience as they look around is that not consistent with that. Now, in some cases, that experience they're seeing is really legitimate. It isn't renters, it's family members, it's guests. It's not always a renter coming in that shouldn't be coming in, but in a number of cases it is, and it's developing some frustration. And it's also impacting our credibility because we're saying we're doing the necessary things, and it's not happening. So, you know, we are responding to a concern that I think is reasonably at play. I did want to, if we can, Stephanie has just sent to me a number of questions from people, and I've always committed I would try to answer these while we had them. So I'm going to go through a couple if I can. If any of you need to sign off, go ahead. I have a question. The sanctuary appears to be obeying the short-term rental restrictions through May 15th. However, it appears that the Andel Inn is renting rooms during the period disallowed under the ordinance. Please explain how this is permissible. And the answer here is because the ordinance that the sanctuary's hotel was a voluntary action. We, the town, have not taken action to restrict the hotel because that management did it voluntarily. As a result of that, we did not address it. We didn't have to address it because they took that action. Therefore, the town has not at this point issued any order that would shut down a hotel, nor has for that matter Governor McMaster. Hotels have been so far considered as what the term an allowed or business. And in most of the other communities that we're dealing with, such as Charleston and so on, hotels have not been shut down. So at the moment, the Andel is not violating any state or local activity. We have had discussions. I have had discussions with the Andel Inn management, asking them to rethink or make sure that they have thought seriously about the benefits of staying open. At the moment, they only have probably less than one handful worth of residents there. As people know, Andel do not have access past the first gate. So generally the people who are there, they're not elsewhere on the island. They're not on the beach. They don't have access to the beach. They don't have access to the restaurants. And in most cases, the people that are there are kind of unique situations. Someone who's down here, they're building a house and they're here for 2 weeks because they're working with their builder and what have you. So at the moment, the Andel Inn is not violating. They have a handful of guests. They are not violating any state or local ordinance. Andel does not provide food service or any of those kinds of things. So let's see what else. Prior to the virus, had the town reduced the number of people renting properties without licenses to a substantial degree, or is there an increase in the number of people renting without licenses in the current situation? And I don't know the answer to that. I think what we are trying to do now is by going through advertisements on all of the different websites, trying to get a handle on, and I think that we've discussed that yesterday, all of the people who are out there advertising rentals on the island when that would be in violation of the actions we've just taken. We are finding, as part of that, a fair number of people who are advertising rentals on Kiowa who we are finding do not have valid licenses. But I don't have right now, it's only been a few days. I don't really have any numbers that would tell you whether, how this compares to any other year when we find a certain number of people who aren't operating without licenses. Someone says, can I bike about the emergency ordinance? Can I bike up to the post center to place mail in the office? Yes. Can I drive my car there for that purpose or for going to the bank? Yes. Can I drive my car to deliver masks and the like to the beach walker offices for charities? Yes. Can I drive to the charities to deliver items they need? Yes. Can I drive my car to check on and deliver items to elderly neighbors, people on the island, keeping the required social distances? Yes. The governor's order, as we interpret it, again, is, while the thrust of it is to err towards, just as it's called, stay at home, it does at the same time reflect that there are are certain parts of daily living that are fine to go about, including, exercise, or there are businesses like banks, like grocery stores, like takeout, that are open, and it is quite acceptable within the governor's order to go to and use those facilities. I hope that answers that question. Please don't terminate short-term rentals in June. We are so looking forward to family time before our military guys get sent overseas. That's my vote. I appreciate that. I would just generally say that, at the moment we have picked May 15th as the first point at which we have put restrictions on short-term rentals and other activities, primarily on the basis that, we certainly hope that by May 15th, we'll find ourselves in a different situation. All I would say is that at the end of the day, of course, the town will have to initially be driven by any actions that the governor takes. But I think I would speak for all the town council members that we certainly have no desire to be extending any of these restrictions a day longer than is required from a public health standpoint. So I think the date right now is May 15th, and to extend beyond that, that would clearly require either some action at the national level or some action by the governor, or something that shows that we clearly have not yet gotten past the point that we need to be from a public health standpoint. I think I only have a couple more. Bear with me. I think I have one person who does not agree with our decision to donate any net fees that we collect from penalties, or I should say, not necessarily doesn't agree, but thinks that decision is premature. And again, I appreciate that. I just think at the end of the day, we think that that what we don't want to do is to have the misperception that the town's efforts, which I believe are going to be pretty aggressive in trying to enforce the actions we've taken, that our motive for doing that is anything other than enforcement. And I just don't want people to believe that somehow we're doing this out of the potential monetary gain. And I think by upfront indicating the town isn't going to benefit is just I appreciate your comment, but I think that's the message that we want to give. And I have another question about suspending residential construction, and I think we continue to stand by I think the stance that we've taken on the continuation of allowing contractors on the island, and we have spoken to that in some of our communications, and I don't think I would certainly ask any council member to join in on that answer, but I don't think our position has changed on that. And that is all the questions I have. I hope that is all of them. But please, anybody out there, if you have additional questions, or if I didn't ask any, send them on to me or call me, and we'll try to answer them. Again, I'll go back to all the council members. Anything else to add?
Thank you, thank you, Stephanie and Joe, for getting this done so quickly.
All right.
You're welcome.
And again, I thank all our residents and our property owners and their families that are here. I have to tell you, despite the real issues that we're dealing here with this one segment, the fact is right now that when you go out and ride around this island, if you go to the beach, if you walk around the bike paths, even now if you go up to Harris Teeter, from my perspective, it seems like people are really trying very hard to do the right thing. People are keeping their distances. They are not, I think that it appears they're using good discretion on when to be out and when to be out and about. Seems like the number of trips to Harris Teeter has decreased considerably. So, if it sounds a lot like we are sort of complaining or concerned about some problem areas, I don't want to get lost in this, that it's absolutely clear the overwhelming number of people on this island are focused on doing the right thing, or at least that's the experience that I'm certainly seeing. So we appreciate that. With that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second.
All right.